The Jacksonville mastermind behind what was the largest cash heist in U.S. history is out of federal prison.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
From helpless hostages to millions of dollars at stake, these are some of the most daring heists of all time. Number 1, the Great Northern Bank Heist, a tale of hostages, millions, and mystery. In December 2004, one of the UK's most brazen bank heists was carried out in Belfast, leaving detectives baffled and politicians outraged. By the end, £26.5 million had vanished from Northern Bank's vaults, sparking widespread curiosity. How was it done? On December 19, 2004, the crime was committed in a movie-like thriller fashion. Gunmen broke into the houses of 2 employees of Northern Bank, Chris Ward and Kevin McMullen, and held their families hostage. McMullen's wife was taken from her home and taken away to an unknown place. Ward's family was kept captive by hooded men. It wasn't just about money, it was about subjugation and control. Come morning, the bank officials were given clear, chilling instructions. Go to work, act normal, and make us rich. It was Christmas, and Belfast was in holiday spirit, but McMullen and Ward quietly went about their grim work inside the Northern Bank headquarters on Donegal Square West. Under instructions from their captors, they loaded trolleys with crates of cash and millions in used and unused Northern Bank pound sterling notes. At 6 p.m., a white van pulled into the bullion bay of the bank. Ward and McMullen filled the van with millions, under the cover of carrying out routine business. The cardboard boxes and office equipment piled high, hiding the cash underneath. This was a test run. Later, the robbers returned and asked for more money. The van made 2 trips in all, leaving with £26.5 million, £16.5 million in brand new untouched currency, £5.5 million in Northern banknotes that had been previously used. £4.5 million was obtained in various currencies, comprising euros and US dollars. By 9 p.m., the masked group had erased their fingerprints, obliterated evidence, and vanished like phantoms into the darkness. After several hours, having prioritized the safety of his family, Chris Ward made the announcement that stunned the globe. We've been robbed. It was not just a robbery, but a grenade thrown into the already fragile peace process in Northern Ireland. The crime was the biggest in UK history and had rattled the region. He did immediately identify who was responsible, and in a preliminary report assigned the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of the Provisional Irish Republican Army, a declaration both the British government and the Independent Monitoring Commission speedily confirmed. Sinn Féin dismissed these accusations as politically motivated. Amid the tumult, Northern Bank encountered a significant logistical challenge. To outmaneuver the criminals, the bank withdrew its uncirculated currency, £9 million in £20 notes and £7.5 million in £10 notes, and subsequently issued entirely new bills. However, the residual £10 million in untraceable cash presented an ideal opportunity for the perpetrators. The subsequent inquiry was extensive, involving 50 detectives, numerous raids, and a series of arrests that spanned from Belfast to Cork. In February 2005, Garda E raided properties in Cork and Dublin, seizing £2.3 million hidden in compost bins and laundry boxes. Among those arrested was financial advisor Ted Cunningham, whose name became synonymous with the heist's aftermath. Despite all of this, the planners were not caught. Most of the loot? Gone. Today, the Northern Bank robbery remains an audacious and mysterious symbol. Was it an inside job? A retirement fund for the IRA? The scale is undeniable. £26.5 million was stolen in broad daylight. Political alliances were frayed, and the story will live on as one of the greatest heists in history. But there ain't no robbery that can beat the grandeur of this next heist. Number 2, the Knightsbridge security deposit robbery, the heist that stunned the world. On a sunny day in summer, July 12, 1987, Knightsbridge streets of London seem to hold even more astounding secrets, as one of history's most daring and sensational robberies occurred in the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Centre. Valerio Vice, a charismatic Italian fugitive, stole money for some 50 armed robberies in Europe. Moving to London in 1986, he put himself into carrying out one of history's great heists. On that fateful July day, Vice and an accomplice entered the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Centre, posing as wealthy clients interested in renting a safety deposit box. Their charm and sophistication disarmed the staff, who had no idea what lay ahead. The moment the men are taken inside, they pull out guns and it suddenly changes the tranquil environment into utter chaos. The staff members and security officers are overpowered, bound, and their screams covered up, as Vice attached a sign across the main door reading, "Closed temporarily." The sign did its job. As shoppers walked by, oblivious, Vice and his expanding crew worked systematically inside. One by one, more accomplices arrived, armed with tools to crack open the deposit boxes holding the treasures of London's elite. When the dust settled, the gang had looted £60 million worth of cash, jewelry, and priceless valuables, a sum equivalent to nearly $98 million in 1987. The wealthiest individuals in the city, trusting the vault's impregnable reputation, were now bereft of their treasures. The real coup, however, was in the precision, not the money. The gang left the scene without raising an alarm and went into the dark of the London night with a fortune that stunned investigators. For an hour, the robbery went unnoticed. When a new crew of employees reported for work, they saw an eerily silent vault, pried open deposit boxes, and an icy realization that something had occurred at the credit union. The police were summoned, and a massive investigation began. A vital clue was found in the vault, a bloody fingerprint. It led to Vice, who became the linchpin in solving the robbery. Although some of his accomplices were caught in coordinated raids in August 1987, Vici had escaped to Latin America with part of the stolen money. Vici could not run forever. Although he was brilliant in planning the robbery, he committed a fatal error. He went back to England to collect his Ferrari Testarossa, an icon of his lavish lifestyle. The police were waiting for him. He was arrested and convicted and sentenced to 22 years in prison. Ironically, Vice struck up a strange friendship with the flying squad officer who led his arrest, exchanging letters and nicknames, Fred and Garfield, during his incarceration. Valerio Vice's life ended in a hail of bullets during a police shootout in 2000 on the day of his release in Italy. His story, however, lives on, immortalized in books and whispered conversations about the boldest criminals in history, just like this next heist, which was almost flawlessly executed. Well, almost. Number 3. The Dunbar Armored Heist. In the early hours of September 12, 1997, a crew of 6 men, led by Alan Pace III, pulled off the largest cash robbery in US history, stealing $18.9 million, or $35.9 million today. This wasn't just brute force, it was a carefully planned heist. Pace, a former Dunbar Armored employee, used his insider knowledge of the facility's security, layout, and guard schedules to orchestrate the flawless crime. The plan was bold and brilliant. After he had been fired from Dunbar for tampering with vehicles, Pace, now intent on proving himself, used the inside knowledge of his job to perfect a flawless heist. He enlisted his childhood friends to commit the crime. On the night of the robbery, they ensured they had tight alibis as they attended a house party. With the darkness, Pace sneaked past the cameras using his keys and the knowledge of the facility's security to access the depot undetected. At 12:30 a.m., the robbery began. Armed with guns and other weapons, the gang sneaked into a lunchtime guard, one at a time, and taped their mouths so that nothing was raised through alarms. By then, in less than an hour, 30 minutes after beginning, all the money, $18.9 million, was stashed into a parked U-Haul truck and disappeared again in the darkness. What was impressive, though, was how meticulous Pace was in making sure that only the non-sequential bills and the high denomination were taken out, so that tracing them to him by the authorities was quite impossible. He also removed the security camera recording devices to leave no footage of the robbery. Law enforcement quickly realized it was an inside job, and Pace was the prime suspect. However, without concrete evidence, they couldn't directly link him to the crime. The robbers quickly laundered the stolen money by investing in properties, cars, and businesses to make it appear legitimate. Los Angeles immigration attorney David Matsumoto played a key role in helping them clean their ill-gotten gains. However, with the law closing in, it was only a matter of time before their operation unraveled. 2 years down the line, one of the robbers, Eugene Lamar Hill Jr., was to make an error that was to unravel the whole crew. Eager to splurge his newfound fortune, Hill, in a classic mistake, offered to pay for a real estate broker using large stacks of money still bound together with the straps used when new, a very fatal mistake that turned out to be his undoing. The suspicious broker contacted the authorities and the case regained momentum. Hill's confession led to the arrest of the rest of the gang. He named Pace and the rest of the crew, and soon the full scope of the heist came to light. Alan Pace III was finally sentenced on April 23, 2001, to 24 years in prison, putting an end to his reign of terror. Eric Damon Boyd had a criminal record and carried a firearm during the robbery. Thus, he was given a 17-year sentence. The other members of the crew received sentences between 8 and 10 years. In a rather shocking turn, Matsumoto's attorney, who was aiding in money laundering, indicted and was given 2.5 years in prison as well. At this point in time, there is less than a third of the stolen money that was retrieved, $5 million. More than $13.9 million still remains lost. However, Pace served his sentence in a federal correctional institution in Safford, Arizona, until his release on October 1, 2020, 10 years after his conviction. But here comes a fallen leader who wanted to make the most of his power. And yes, it went on to be one of the biggest heists of all time. Number 4. Saddam Hussein's $1 billion heist. A last-ditch bid to save a regime. The plan of the theft that took place on March 18, 2003, was on an entirely different scale, just days before the US invasion of Iraq. Saddam Hussein, thinking that his rule was coming to an end, instructed his son Qusay to transfer nearly $1 billion of Iraq's money to another country for secretive, broadly establishing the robbery that would make the world wonder about its future. On March 18, 2003, Qusay Hussein went to the Central Bank of Iraq with a letter from his father, which he had written to withdraw $1 billion. 3 trucks loaded with a quarter of the totality of the Iraqi currency reserve were to be taken out before the arrival of the American forces. The plan seems to have been an otherwise well-coordinated operation with the cooperation of loyalist officials to extend funding for resistance operations or to stage the crashing of the dinar to fund escape for Saddam and his entourage. While the withdrawal might have been legal while Saddam was still in power, it looked more like a desperate bid to stay in power as the war drew nearer. That was the question many asked. Was it Saddam's own money, or was it Iraq's money? Originally, the goals remain ambiguous, its intent unknown. The US military gets involved. As Qusay moved the money out of Iraq, suspicion started to rise. Some reports indicated that the money was being smuggled across Iraq's border with Syria on its way to a haven. The US military was keeping a close eye on the situation, and special forces were deployed to track the movement of the trucks. But Saddam Hussein's regime had a major problem that didn't get away cleanly. Despite these efforts to move the money, the US military discovered caches of the stolen funds, having an estimated $650 million in various locations around Iraq. Some of the money was hidden in the palaces of Saddam's sons, including Qusay's brother Uday, whose lavish residences were raided in the wake of the invasion. However, the heist did not end there. The remaining $350 million never saw daylight again, and to this date is still a mystery that has been haunting investigators. By July 2003, Qusay and Uday were cornered by US forces in the northern city of Mosul. A brutal firefight ensued, with American troops firing 12 anti-tank missiles into the building where the brothers were hiding. The standoff ended in a bloody and dramatic showdown, and both sons of Saddam were killed. But when the smoke cleared, something was amiss. Despite the high stakes and massive effort to track down the remaining money, there was no sign of the $350 million that had vanished from the Central Bank of Iraq. It's as though the cash had disappeared without a trace. For now, the whereabouts of the missing $350 million had not been found. Despite such searches being conducted, nobody has been able to identify it. Was it taken out of Iraq clandestinely, buried in bank vaults, or kept under pillows, or merely embezzled by one of the henchmen of Saddam? Opinions differ, from it financing rebellion's actions to it being transferred to Syria. But where does this leave the truth then? This could only be said to be buried somewhere in between rumor and mystery. While the $650 million recovered by the US was a significant setback for Saddam's financial networks, the mystery surrounding the missing $350 million added another layer to the already mysterious history of the invasion of Iraq. The billion-dollar heist is just one of many dark chapters in the downfall of Saddam Hussein's regime. As for Qusay Hussein, his tragic fate serves as a grim reminder of how even the most carefully laid plans can be undone in the chaos of war, and how a nation's fortune can disappear in the blink of an eye. Some of these heists put fictitious Hollywood movies to shame. But which one of these heists do you think went horribly wrong? Let us know in the comments. And if you're looking for more insights into some of the greatest moments in history, make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.